Right. So resuming our discussion on bundling, in the digital economy, right? This bundling is seen as a common method followed by many of the business organizations because of the zero marginal cost property that we talked about earlier, right? Because of the zero marginal cost property that we talked about. So it doesn't cost for a service provider of a digital service at all, or it's very less to add another service it already owns to the package, right? We talked about zero marginal cost where producing an additional unit of a product or service costs almost zero in a digital economy. So because of this property, for a service provider in a digital economy, in order to add an additional product to the existing product, that means the existing offered service, if we are going to bundle it with another service and provide it to the customers, it is not going to add a cost to the service provider in a digital environment, right? So the consumer might find this model attractive because additional service is being provided to the consumer, right? That means additional value is given to the consumer, and also they are showing a enhanced or increased willingness to buy this bundle, product or service bundle, right? Now, just something additional to what we discussed in digital markets, in digital economy, just like they do bundling, also unbundling is also observed, right, in digital economies, because why? Now, previously bundled products can be unbundled and offered to consumers as well, right? So, for instance, in the music industry, right, in the music industry, we know CDs are unbundled to single tracks and sold to the consumers, right? In like iTunes store, for example, in Apple iTunes, you can buy a single track, or you can buy a complete album, right? So likewise, marginal cost of providing a complete album or the marginal cost of providing a single product is zero in both cases. So that is why we say that in digital markets, mostly because of this zero marginal cost property, service providers tend to go for these kinds of approaches, right? Right. So with that, let's move on to the next subtopic of today's discussion, right? Right. Now we are going to talk about production of digital services. Production of digital services within a digital economy, right? So here we are going to focus on 4 main ways in which digital services can be developed within a digital economy, right? There is in-house production, commons-based peer production, crowdsourcing, and open source software. So these are the four methods that we are going to talk about when it comes to production of digital services within a digital economy, right? So we have to understand that these production models are not independent, right? For example, if one organization goes for in-house production, it does not mean that they only do in-house production and there are no any properties of crowdsourcing. There are no any properties of open source software. No, it's not like that, right? In the reality, a single company may adopt or apply a mix of these approaches when they are developing and producing their digital services, right? So what you have to understand is that it is a mix of several approaches in most of the cases, right? Okay, so moving forward to first look at in-house production. So this is the most abundantly observed method that we see, right? And the method that you already know of as well, right? Mostly අපි දකින්නේ මේ ක්‍රමය තමයි අනුගමනය කරනවා බොහෝ විට in-house production. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි කියනවා firm production කියලා මේකට, right? We also refer to it as firm production. So this means that the company develops the service using internal resources that are found within the company. Financial resources, human resources, right? Found within the company. Possibly they are combined with manpower contracted from other enterprises as well. Sometimes අපි outsource කරනවා කියලා ඕගලන් අහලා තියෙනවද නේද? කියන්නේ අපි පිටින් මොකක් හරි manpower එකක් වෙන පිටින් කාගේ හරි expertise එකක් ගන්න ඕනේ. උදාහරණයක් product එකක් develop කරන්න අපි marketing part එක outsource කරනවා. Right? So that kind of expertise if you are outsourcing it, right? So that is also combined with this in-house production, right? In this case, the company is in control of the whole development process and owns the final digital service and intellectual property rights associated with it, right? So may in-house production වලදී මේ entire development process එකේම පාලනය control එක තියෙන්නේ ඒ සලකා බලන company කාතේ, and also they own the final digital service that is produced and the all intellectual property rights that are attached with the product or service. For example, if it's a software, then all the intellectual property rights are also attached to the company considered. So this also includes part of outsource. This also includes the part outsourced to independent companies, as we talked about. Right? අපි independent party එකකට අපි හිතමු consultancy එකක් මොකක්ද strategic consultancy එකක් හෝ ඒ වගේ part එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා කියලා ඒ part එකත් ඔක්කොම control එක තියෙන්නේ අපේ in-house production team එක තුල. So this has been illustrated in figure 2.4. If we go to the figure, right? So like this you can see there is a company. Let's think that this is the company we are considering. This company wants to produce this digital service, right? They want to produce this digital service. So in order to produce this, basically most of the let's say resources they are getting from inside the company. Let's assume so. But also a part of the work is outsourced to another company. Let's say the marketing part. Or let's say the designing part. So both these together, right? So these companies' help is also needed in order to produce this digital service. However, the ownership, as you can see, ownership is with this company that we initially talked about. So this is an illustration of in-house production, right? So in-house production may include the use of open source software and perform parts of the production using crowdsourcing. So we are going to talk about this open source software and crowdsourcing in detail in the forthcoming slides. So for now, just have an idea that like at the beginning, I told you, other types of production methods can be used other than a single production method in a digital economy. So these are two other production methods that we are going to talk about. So in in-house production, all these types can be collaborated together as well, right? All these can be collaborated together, right? This second method might be somewhat new to you, right? You may have not heard of this before. So the second method of producing digital products is commons-based peer production, right? So in commons-based peer production, it is a way of producing goods and services in which a large number of people, we call them collaborators, take part in the development of the good or service. යම් භාණ්ඩයක් හෝ සේවාවක් නිෂ්පාදනය කිරීම සඳහා collaborators ලා ගණනාවක්, ඒකට දායකත්වය දක්වන පුද්ගලයන් ගණනාවක් එකට එකතු වෙලා භාණ්ඩ හෝ සේවා නිපදවනකොට අපි ඒකට කියනවා commons based peer production එකක් කියලා. So usually this group of collaborators is self-organized, right? It's a self-organized. ඒ පිරිස විසින්ම තමයි ස්වයං වශයෙන් සංවිධානය වෙලා ඉන්න පිරිසක්. And without central leadership or coordination, there is no central commanding control or let's say central leadership authority එකක් නැහැ මෙතෙන්ට, right? Coordination එකක්. So these people, what they do is a platform for gathering the contributions from each collaborator into a final digital service must be established before collaboration start. So before these people start working together, they decide on, or they come up with, they put together a platform where every person collaborating for this project can be contributing in their own way to this end product, to this end digital service, right? දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් එහෙම ඒ වගේ ඊට සමාන දෙයක් නේ ඔයගලගේ assignments වල වෙන්නේ නේ. දැන් මේ දවස්වල ගෙදරින් ඉඳන් කරන assignments වල, even in the past when you did them, what do? There is a common platform. Maybe you're sharing a Google document, maybe you're sharing a shared PowerPoint presentation, and you're allocating tasks, allocating work for each of the group members to contribute. So each group member, what do? They visit the platform, which is your shared document, or maybe your shared PowerPoint, or maybe in other way, right? They're accessing this platform and contributing their bit to developing the assignment, right? So it's something similar like that, right? So the platform is used throughout the production of the digital service to organize and divide work between the collaborators. So in order to conduct that communication and to do the work allocation, to organize it properly, this platform is being used within the entire production, right? Then so the collaborators who are contributing to this project, the collaborators who are contributing to the completion of this service are not being organized by a company. They are not being put together by some firm. Just like we saw in the in-house production. In-house production එකේදී අපි කියවනේ company එකට තමයි control එක තියෙන්නේ නේද? But මෙතෙන්දී එහෙම එකක් නැහැ. Often collaborators do not receive any financial rewards for their contribution. So just because they contributed, the collaborators won't be getting any special financial reward. So then figure 2.5 illustrates this model of commons-based peer production, right? Commons-based peer production is illustrated in figure 2.5. So if we move forward, we can see. Now, if you have heard of the Linux operating system, right? Linux operating system, it's an open source software platform where to create this software, to create this operating system, so there has to be some coding done, no? Coding right? So coding වලින් අපි software එකක් හදන්නේ නේ, that is the building block of a software. So this Linux operating system, right? This software is being built with the contribution of such a set of collaborators, right? A lot of collaborators over a long period of time, right? Hundreds of computer scientists contributing to the evolution of the Linux software, which happens over a lengthy period of time. Still an open source software, which we talk about in the current context as well. We will talk about what is open source in detail in the forthcoming slides. So as you can see here, there are several collaborators who are coming together with their bit of contribution in a common platform, right? In a commonly shared digital platform to produce the Linux software, right? So this is the digital service. So this process can continue for a lengthy period of time, right? So that is commons-based peer production. Right. Then we talk about crowdsourcing. දැන් මේක ඔයගොල්ලන් බොහෝ දුරට අහලා තියෙන්න ඉඩ තියෙනවා. You may have heard of the concept of crowdsourcing before as well, right? What happens in the crowdsourcing model? Organizations and individuals produce digital services by outsourcing tasks to the public, right? So by way of outsourcing certain parts of tasks of a large project, maybe of you have an end goal, you have an end project in mind, In order to gather contribution from a large amount of people, you outsource, you break down these parts of the project and outsource it to a public, right? Now, the difference between crowdsourcing and outsourcing is that outsourcing implies the work is contracted out to another company on strict commercial and judicial conditions. දැන් අපි outsourcing වලදී දැන් මම අර කලින් කිව්වා වගේ මොකක් හරි භාණ්ඩයක් ඔසේවක් නිෂ්පාදනය කරලා දෙකේ marketing function එක අපි outsource කරනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් designing function එක අපි outsource කරනවා. right? එතකොට ඒ කම්පැනි එකකට අපි consultant විදියට හෝ advisors ලා විදියට හෝ outsource කරනකොට මොකද වෙන්නේ? එයාලත් එක්ක අපි strict contracts වලට එනවා නේ. ඔයාලගේ වගකීම් ටික මේවා අපි end of the period බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මෙන්න මේ outcome එක අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඔයගොල්ලන් මේ කාලෙදි මේක deliver කරයි කියලා. Likewise we come into agreements and also there is a strict commercial and judicial condition. If you default any condition, if you are failing to fulfill any conditions, there are some judicial provisions attached to it. But in crowdsourcing, it is not like that, right? It implies that the work is done by arbitrary groups of individuals, right? So people volunteer for these kinds of work often, and there is no formalized participation as such, right? අපි formally කියන්නේ නැහැ මෙන්න මේ period එක ඇතුලේ වැඩ කරලා මෙන්න මේ කාලය ඇතුළත මේ task එක ඔයා complete කරන්න ඕන කියලා allocation එකක් මෙතෙන්දි වෙන්නේ නැහැ, right? Arbitrarily gather වෙච්ච පුද්ගලයන් එකතු වෙලා contribute කරනවා මේ වගේ project එකකට, right? The result of the work may then be more arbitrary, right? But may also lead to better, cheaper and more versatile solutions, right? දැන් අර control එක coordination part එක ටිකක් අඩු නිසා, right? අපි මේක volunteer work වලින් ගොඩක් සිද්ධ වෙන නිසා බොහෝ අවස්ථාවලදී, right? ඒතර අපිට හම්බෙන result එකේ අපි කියන්නේ outsource කරලා ගන්නවා වගේ result එකට වඩා සමහර අවස්ථාවන් වලදී අපිට එන result එක වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, right? මොකද දැන් මේ arbitrary කියලා කියන්නේ? What do you mean by arbitrary? This arbitrary means it's like a random choice, right? It's a random choice. So එතකොට අපිට එන solution එකක් ඒ වගේම random solution එකක් වීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා, right? Not always, but it is possible. But also on the other hand, these kinds of approaches can pave the way for creating solutions in a cheaper way, right? අපි ලොකු විශාල මුදලක් වැය කරලා කෙනෙක්ට formally outsource කරලා ගන්නවට වඩා අඩු වියදමකින් අපිට මේක කරගැනීමේ හැකියාව ලැබෙනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර අවස්ථාවන් වලදී ඊටත් වඩා හොඳ ප්‍රතිඵල අපිට ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි මේකට සම්බන්ධ වෙන කට්ටියගේ expertise එක දැනුම experience එක වැඩි කට්ටිය මේකට සම්බන්ධ වෙනවා, right? And also there might be more improved, versatile, better solutions coming out of these kinds of projects, right? So the production model in crowdsourcing is being illustrated in figure 2.6. So here is how crowdsourcing happens. So there is a company, right? There is a company and a digital service is being produced. So this company hires these people, right? Hires these people who are crowdsourcing, and these people together, right? Now, in the earlier version you saw, there is a direct contribution from the company as well to produce this digital service. Can you see? But here it's not so. Can you see? Right? Here the contribution is not that significant. So they are giving this project to these people who are arbitrarily working, and they come up with a solution, this digital service, and the ownership is with this company who initiated this crowdsourcing project, right? So even you may have come up with these kinds of situations in sometimes day-to-day life. Sometimes you may have experienced this on social media. You may have seen this on websites. They were advertised කරලා තියෙනවා ඔයගොල්ලන් සමහර විට දැකලා තියෙනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්, right? Crowdsourcing has become a very popular way in the present context, where expertise of people is being gathered to complete projects, to get successful solutions to problem, so to speak, right? So crowdsourcing is also actually a form of peer production, right? We can see that as a form of peer production. So the difference is that now in commons based peer production that we talked about earlier, so that may follow a certain arbitrary development path, right? And sometimes it may result in viable products, right? Whereas in a crowdsourcing project, it aims to developing a predefined product, right? The product is already being predefined. And crowdsourcing can also employ single individuals for some tasks as well, right? And crowdsourcing can be used at any stage of production, any stage of product development, if the company is wishing to do so, right? From the idea setting, from the point of idea generation to production, testing, marketing, right? In any stage, crowdsourcing can happen, right? So the prerequisite or a pre-fulfilled condition should be that the collaboration can take over the internet. So that is why we are learning all these things. These collaborations are happening over a networked media, right? So until a final digital product is being produced, until the final digital service is being delivered, the company may use crowdsourcing at all stages of their production, or sometimes even only in certain parts of the production as well, right? So that is how crowdsourcing happens in organizations. And sometimes organizations, conduct certain competitions to gather people to participate in these kinds of crowdsourcing projects, right? For example, if a company wants to develop a solution, better security solutions, they may put together a competition or a contest, right, to gather experts who are willing to, provide security solutions, encryption methods, and things like that. So these are actually happening in large scale in the world, right? Or hackathon scale වගේ ඒවා සමාජයට වඩා දැක්කලා ඇති නේද? ඒ වගේ දේවල් වලදී වෙන්නේ අපි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට පබ්ලික් එකට ඕපන් කරනවා මොකක් හරි concept එකක් අපිට fulfill කරගන්න ඕනේ project එක අපි contest එකක මාර්ගයෙන් ඒක ඕපන් කරනවා පබ්ලික් එකට. එතකොට ඒගොල්ලන්ට පුළුවන් එයාලගේ contribution එක දෙන්න, එයාලගේ solution එක දෙන්න. අපිට අවශ්‍ය වෙන හොඳම solution එක අපිට ඒ අතරින් හොයාගන්නත් පුළුවන්. So crowdsourcing operates in these kinds of different ways, right? So when the competition is being won by someone, right, so that project is complete. So the company gets the chance to select the best algorithm or the best security solution provided by the best contestant, and they get that by the collaboration of a lot of contestants who are coming to the competition, right? So Netflix did something similar way back around in 2009, right? Where they wanted to get a improved algorithm, right? So recommendation on an algorithm. So the winner is actually said to have received $1 million US, right? And Netflix was benefited because they got the intended recommended algorithm that they can use for their business activities, right? So things like that happen in these crowdsourcing platforms. Also, some of you may have seen crowdsourcing being used for project funding, right? අපි මේකට crowdfunding කියලා කියනවා. So crowdfunding is also popular in the current context, where in order to gather funds for a project, you make it popularized among the public. Crowd lending concept is also there. So in crowd lending, to invest funds, we put up with crowd lending projects. So if you have heard of this Kickstarter.com, right? Visit the site and see. Kickstarter.com is a example site for crowdfunding, right? So if I show that to you, right? So let me share my screen with you. Right. I think you all can see what I'm sharing. Now, this is the Kickstarter.com site that I told you about, right? So what happens here? Can you see? So creative work shows us what's possible. Help fund it here. So they are gathering funds here. Here, they are shown how many projects were funded, and towards creative work, this many dollars have been collected, right? So you can refer this site and see what kind of work they keep on doing, right? So if you go to this section, so where they are trying to give a boost for ambitious artists, right? So likewise, there are so many areas, so many projects that they are hoping to fund via these kinds of projects. And also, if someone wants to, you can there is an option for starting a project, right? So you can start a project here and get the support of people, raise the funds that is needed, right? So likewise, interesting setups like this are there in the world, right? Okay, so moving back to our chapter. Right. So we were here in crowdsourcing. So let me share with you a small video clip which will very precisely show you this process of crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, right? Right. I hope you all can see my screen and hopefully hear the video. Right. So let's have a look at this.
Crowdsourcing is a term that people have been using a lot lately. Do you know what it means? Crowdsourcing is the process of connecting with large groups of people via the internet who are tapped for their knowledge, expertise, time or resources. This idea of reaching out to the crowd isn't new. Even before crowdsourcing and the internet, we often collaborated with groups of people. Some people helped because they were seeking a reward for their efforts, or sometimes they just wanted to help. Let's go back to 1714. Sailing the seven seas was necessary but really dangerous to navigate. So, the British government held a contest asking people for a solution. John Harrison answered the call. He invented the marine chronometer and was awarded a large cash prize. Sailors used the marine chronometer to determine a ship's longitude with the help from the stars. Let's move forward a bit to 1858. A group of scholars created the first Oxford English Dictionary. It was a huge project and they needed help. So, they asked for lots of volunteers to write about different topics according to their expertise, and then they put it all together. The point is, newfangled idea, but it wasn't until we all got connected that crowdsourcing came about, because with the internet, you can reach lots of people very quickly and you can direct and organize their work. Think of it like this. Crowdsourcing is a way of solving problems and producing things by connecting online with people that you otherwise wouldn't know. Anyone can use crowdsourcing: companies, governments, groups, and individuals. They can use it to grow their organizations or support their causes. There are 4 different ways crowdsourcing works. The first enables you to access a large online labor force. You can identify and select workers, or you can just post your work and let the workers find you. The second allows you to ask the crowd to help you find the solution to a problem. A third is for when knowledge exists, but you need help finding and organizing it. The fourth is when you need ideas from the crowd and their opinion and feedback. So, as you can see, there are different ways crowdsourcing works, and there are different things you can do with crowdsourcing. When you use the crowd to help collect and organize information, we call this accessing distributed knowledge. Crowdfunding, where you can raise capital from many individuals who believe in your venture or cause, each making small donations that add up to a lot. When you use crowdsourcing to connect with an on-demand, scalable workforce to perform a broad range of tasks, we call this accessing cloud labor. Open innovation is where you use crowdsourcing to reach diverse and creative people for new idea generation and problem solving. Crowdsourcing can be used to access the world's creative communities to design and develop original art, media, or content. We call this crowd creativity. There are many tools available that can be used in crowdsourcing that support collaboration and communication among distributed groups of people. You want to know more, right? I thought so. Visit crowdsourcing.org for everything you want to know about crowdsourcing.
Right. So that was an example of crowdsourcing for you. How crowdsourcing can be used in the practical context, and how different contexts use crowdsourcing, and also how it has existed in the world for a very long period of time. Right. All right. So with that, let's move forward in our lecture. Right. So next we are going to look at open source software, right? Open source software. So what is this? Open source software is an initiative for the collaborative development of software, right? So you may have heard that in order to build a software, there are a large group of people that is being needed, playing different roles, right? So by using open source software approach, this can be done collaboratively, right? So open source software and its cousin, that means closely related free software, are important ingredients in common based peer platforms that we talked about earlier, right? So the source code of the open source software, right? The main code, right? Source code is the background, the language with which the software is written, right? The source code of the open source software is made available to other developers, along with a license allowing them to use, modify, and redistribute the software, right? So this software is made available to a multitude of other users out there in the public, and allowing them to giving them a license by giving them the permission to modify the source code, right? And to use the software, and even to redistribute the software, right? So the license is issued by the holder of the copyright. There is an owner of the copyright, and he or she is the person who is issuing the license. And it is approved by the non-profit organization called Open Source Initiative, right? So the use of software may be free, or sometimes it may be subject to a small fee. So these Linux and Android are famous open source softwares that we talk about, right? All right, so let me share a small video with you regarding open source software so that you understand this concept better, because sometimes it may be a new concept to you.
Almost every piece of computer software is created using source code, or the technical blueprint that tells a program how to function. When creators release their finished product to the public, they must decide whether to make their software open source or closed source. With closed source software, also known as proprietary software, the public is not given access to the source code, so they can't see or modify it. But with open source software, the source code is publicly available, and programmers can see or modify that code if they desire. Keep in mind that you don't have to read or change any code in order to use an open source product. The vast majority of apps, games, and other popular software are closed source. However, there are open source options for many types of programs. If you want an open source alternative to Microsoft Office, you could use LibreOffice. Instead of using Windows, you can try an open source Linux operating system. Other open source examples include the Firefox web browser and WordPress blogging platform. One of open source's biggest advantages is that it's usually free, though some features and technical support may cost extra. Also, since the code is available to anyone who wants it, public collaboration can find bugs, add features, and improve performance within a relatively short amount of time. With that said, open source software is not perfect. It may not be as user-friendly as closed source software, and if you run into trouble, it may be difficult to find technical support, especially for less popular programs. As for closed source software, it's more likely to be a stable, focused product, and if you need support, customer service is typically easier to access. However, closed source software often costs money, and if it has any bugs or missing features, you'll have to wait on the creator to address the problems. Now that you understand the difference between open and closed source software, you can take advantage of the type that best meets your needs.
Right. So I hope with that you got a good idea about open source software and closed source software, and you knew how to compare between the two. The reason why I showed you a video including closed source software as well is that then you can clearly understand what this open source is all about, right? So there are pros and cons of open source software both. So I hope now you have a better understanding about it. Right, next we are going to move on to a new subtopic. This is value models, right? Value models. There are several models explaining how value is created within a company. Porter's model is appropriate for analyzing the industrial company's conversion of raw material into a final tangible product sold to consumers. Right, so the Porter's model is being widely accepted as appropriate for the purpose of analyzing an industrial company. Right, if we take an industrial economy where physical goods are sold, right, and the usual goods and services that we know of, right. Porter introduced a model where industrial companies' conversion of raw material into final products sold to consumers can be analyzed, right? So from the point of starting of obtaining raw materials, bringing it into the organization, further processing it, and dispatching it, right? Selling it, providing after sale services. All these things were organized in a chain, and therefore these companies are categorized as value chains. Why? Because the production follows a linear chain of transformation, right? A linear chain of transformations. So in 1998, however, Stabile and Felstead proposed two additional types of companies in addition to these value chains, which used completely different ways to produce the product, right? They were referred to as value shops and value networks. So maybe some of you are already familiar with the concept of value chain, but this value shop and value network may be new to most of you. So today we are going to look at all three of these models. So moving ahead, first let's look at the value chain, right? A factory can be represented as a linear chain consisting of three elements, right? According to the value chain. So what are the three elements? Logistics in, that is retrieval of raw material, retrieval of components or services, and then the production of goods where the conversion process happens. And the thirdly, logistics out, that is delivering goods to the market, right? In addition, there is a need for common activities such as management, buildings, inventory, product, storage facilities, and research. So this classification may be somewhat unfamiliar to what you have already learned, where you have learned a classification of value chain as primary activities and support activities, and primary activities were classified into several types. Support activities were classified into several types. But here, what we are trying to explain to you is that the value chain concept entails these major components that we are going to talk about now. These kinds of concepts, right? So the value chain concept entails the bringing in of raw materials, right? Logistics in, then the conversion process, the production process, and then there's a logistics out, right? So this finally concludes as a final product, right? So then there are some other activities referred to as common activities. But in the traditional so in the traditional model, right? In the traditional model, these are classified into primary activities and support activities. And I will share with you a figure of that traditional value chain model as well, so that it is more easier for you to compare and understand the concept between the two. So this type of configuration of value is called a value chain, right? So this chain is just a model by which it is easier to understand the economy and strategy of the classical industrial producing organization producing tangible goods, right? So this is a model which makes it easier to understand the strategies followed by classical industrial organizations producing tangible goods, right? So as you all know, in the value chain, we are trying to explore after putting the stages in the linear process like this, we are trying to understand where value is created, value is added. අපේ organization එක ඇතුලේ මේ කියන processes ඇතුලේ value add වෙන්නේ මොන මොන තැන් වලින්ද කියලා අපි අවබෝධ කරගන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා, right? අපි එහෙම අවබෝධ කරගෙන අපිට value තවදුරටත් improve කරගන්න කොහොමද කියලා අඳුනා ගන්න උත්සාහ කරනවා මේ value chain එක හරහා. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදියට ගත්තොත් in a digital setting, right? Organizations try to identify what are the value adding processes in their value chain, and then they are trying to determine next to what sort of areas are we going to introduce value improvements. Now, in a practical sense, organizations may not be able to introduce improvements to all the activities that they have identified or all the activities that they have recognized, right? So instead, what they are doing is they are prioritizing to which areas are we going to introduce improvements. Maybe those improvements can be in terms of introducing a new human resource management system, right? Maybe a new ERP system, maybe a new stock control system, right? So maybe a new logistics management system. So likewise, they are trying to streamline the process to add more and more value to make the processes more efficient and effective, right? And after that, they will be implementing this. And also, usually companies compare their value chain with other value chains of other organizations in the industry, and they try to benchmark themselves with those companies, right? And then they try to improve themselves as well. So these kinds of things happen in the practical setting. So let me share with you some more detail regarding the value chain.
The model looks at what value the company adds to each link, and thereby uncovers the company's competitiveness. The value chain consists of 9 value activities that together create added value and thereby the company's margin. Margin, in many places also called profit, is actually the value chain's 10th field. Here there is no activity. The field size is dependent on the previous 9 fields. The profit is equal to the difference between the value chain's total value, which is the value of the product to the customer, that is the price he is willing to pay for the product, and the total cost of producing the product, which is the total of the costs that are in the value chain's 9 activities. The 9 activities are divided into 2 categories. The first is primary activities. These activities include the main activities. All 5 activities are directly involved in the production and selling of the actual product. The second category is support activities. They go across the major activities and aim to coordinate their functions as best as possible with each other. The primary activities consist of the 5 activities at the bottom of the model. These are inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, and service. Each of these activities may be described as follows. Inbound logistics can consist of receiving goods, inspection, storage, receiving returned
Right. So I think you got a good understanding about the concept of traditional value chain there. You saw how primary activities and support activities are classified, and how the primary activities are subdivided and support activities are subdivided. So that is the traditional value chain that you may have come across in many instances, right? Then we are moving on to the concept of value shop, right? So value shops are the problem solving organizations such as consultants, health services, engineering companies, and architects. They try to solve problems in organizations, right? So they earn money. The better and faster they can solve a problem, they earn more money. Right? The most important competitive market force for value shops is their reputation. Reputation is a key crucial factor which drives the operations of value shops. So these shops may exist within networks or in chains. Then As an example, we can take the advertisement department of newspapers, or sometimes the design departments of automobile manufacturers, and even the training centers of airlines, right? Those kinds of things we can take as value shops example. So the common idea, that observation that you have to make is that these are problem solving organizations, right? The nature is that they are solving some sort of a problem issue, right? So if we take universities and schools as well, right, they are also can be considered as value shops. They also can be considered as value shops. Why? Because they perform research, teaching, and innovation, right? The value shop illustrated in figure 2.8, in which it receives problems from its customers and solves them using its internal competence and experience from previous projects. So if we look at the figure here, the figure of a value shop is shown. Then there is a customer who is having a problem, right? So here is where all the work happens, right? So when this is presented, right, the problem solving process starts, and you can see a solution is being developed, it is being evaluated, right? This process happens continuously until a solution is provided, right? Solution is provided, and there's a separate administration going on inside the value shops, right? So the value shop may also draw upon external resources to solve complex problems requiring specific expertise that the value shop does not have. Sometimes, if the value shop does not have enough expertise to solve these problems, they may get external support. Maybe an external consultant, maybe an external, specialist, right? And then expertise can be obtained by them to provide that particular service. Then after solving that problem, that solution will be presented to the customer, right? So that is in essence the idea of a value shop, right? Sorry. So these value shops, they actually depend on customers or clients who have problems that they are not able to solve themselves, right? So there are several mechanisms that allow these value shops to solve problems better or even faster than the client if they did it by themselves, right? So these may include that these value shops should know more about the problem than the client, right? They know more about the problem than the client. Then the shop possesses some sort of specialized method to deal with the problem, right? Then employees are expert professionals in the relevant field, right? The employees in the value shop are experts in the relevant field. And also this shop is able to form flexible project teams and able to reorganize very quickly to solve new problems. So because of these features, they are at an advantage when it comes to solving customer problems, right? And they always try to compete to attract the clients with problems to solve, right? So there is a competition among these types of value shops, and it heavily also depends on reputation. As I mentioned earlier, reputation is a very crucial component of value shops, and it's a scarce resource as well. So if there's a good reputation for the organization, then there will be a better chance at attracting clients who bring in problems to solve, right? Then we move on to the next part. value network. Value network. Right. So what happens in a value network? Now, this is the third type of model that we are discussing under value models, right?